Welcome everyone to this webinar. It's a second webinar of our series related to EU exports. We've been lucky enough to be working in collaboration with SPEAC project. It's a project funded by the European Union with a mission to uphold high quality standards for safer non-food consumer products entering Europe from China. Now, representing Speak today, we have Torben Rabeck, a familiar face, an expert that we've worked with many times before on many webinars in the past. We welcome you to visit these webinars on our website, and you can review them and watch them in your own time. On top of that, we're also joined by Lee Min Duk, our business development manager from our Vietnam office, HQTS. He has a very extensive background related to Southeast Asia and South Asia projects, specifically in quality related projects. Yeah. So I'm really excited for everyone to join us. Today's topic specifically revolves around exporting to Europe, a practical guide to conformity assessment. Today, you'll learn how to choose the correct EU legislations for your product, selecting the relevant and suitable standards, defensible risk assessment. So that includes identifying hazards via the EU product safety gate. You'll learn verifying compliance with essential health and safety requirements, practical testing strategies, building technical documentation, as well as Duke will be sharing some practical case studies. And at the very end, we'll have a Q&A. So we already received some questions from registrants. We have registrants all over the world for this webinar. A lot of them will be joining in at different times due to time zones, and we'll also be sending out a recording of today's webinar via email to everyone that's registered as well. So if anything comes up on your side within the next 60 minutes of the webinar, that's totally fine. We'll be sending you a recording following this webinar anyway. Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to write them down and wait till the very end for the Q&A session. Without further ado, I'd love to give the floor to Torben, and Torben will be sharing some slides and information. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much indeed, Anthony, for this very kind introduction. I must also say I'm thrilled to work with you, and it's a pleasure for me to come back and tell about these things, train about these. I will just share my screen. I think I have shared it, yeah. Like this. As Anthony just said, this is a guide in conformity assessment. Thank you very much for inviting me to give this presentation. Before I set up with the conformity assessment, I would like to just recap what the basic legal requirements are in Europe when you want to sell to the EU. I put them in this slide. The first requirement is that all products must be safe for the user, and of course it must be compliant. The legislation for all different kinds of products also says that the manufacturer shall carry out a risk assessment for the product to find out what hazards are presented by the product. The manufacturer shall also draw up a technical documentation for the product, and he shall draw up a declaration of conformity and affix the CE marking as the last thing. I'm also going to say that I will be using personal protective equipment, or PPE, as the example to explain some of these theories that I'm discussing here. When you want to check that a product or prove that a product is safe and compliant, you have to go through this staircase with 6 steps. First is to identify the applicable legislation. Then you need to identify the standards that apply to your product. Third, you will identify the test requirements that are necessary to use. And then in the fourth step, you will test the product to check that it actually fulfills the safety requirements. And this means that you have a lot of different information that you can compile into the technical documentation in the fifth step. And last but not least, you have to affix the CE mark and you have to sign the Declaration of Conformity. I'm going to use this as the agenda for this intervention, and I would also say that you will see a lot of QR codes in the slides. In this case, it's to a SPEAC Finder fact sheet we prepared about conformity assessment, where you can read more details. But let's get started. First step, identify applicable legislation. How do we do that? Well, I have something I call the golden link. If you follow the QR code, it will take you to a website under the European Commission's homepage called Harmonized Standards, and it is an extremely useful link. So download it, bookmark it, and you'll see that you will use it several times every day. That's what I do at least. The first page, the one called Harmonized Standards, lists all the different product safety regulations that you can come across. And what you have to do here is simply to start from the top and then scroll all the way through all the possibilities to see which of these directives or which of these product groups fits to the product that you are selling. And of course, if you are talking about personal protective equipment, there is a line for it itself in the table, simply called personal protective equipment or PPE. So that's the one that you can click to find the applicable directive. But one word of caution, there may be more regulations that governs a given product. I've just taken this shoe and let's just consider an example where somebody is installing battery-driven electric heating in gloves, for instance. Or you could imagine that you have lights in visibility vest or something like that. In that case, there's something electric in the clothing or in the PPE. And then you also have to consider that, which means the low voltage directive probably, the EMC directive in any case, the ROS directive in any case, and probably the battery regulation. You could also be in the situation that the PPE resembles toys, and in that case, you need to look into the toy safety directive to see how you can check or verify that a product is safe. So go through the golden link, identify the legislation, and be aware that there may be more pieces of legislation that applies to your product. Next step, identify standards. Yes, we'll go for it. Again, like before, we go back to the golden link, click on that, go into the harmonized standards. We scroll down. Let us imagine that we're looking for just a simple personal protective equipment with no extra features. Then you scroll down here and you click on this link. It will take you to a subsite that shows different information about personal protective equipment. One thing is that you can download the regulation on the top link here. You can download the complete regulation and you can download it for free, and then you are able to study it at home in your own speed. But there's more interesting information here. If you go a little step further down, you will see there is a guide to application of the directive of PPE, and there is general guidance on CE marking for professionals. There's a lot of information. It's a very good idea to explore this website to get some idea about what sort of help you can get from it. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you will find lists of harmonized standards. The lists come in two different formats. One is the PDF format and one is the XLS or Excel format. The two files are alike, so pick the one that you want or the one that you're used to working with. If you download the PDF version, it looks like this. So it's a table, and I'm just trying to zoom in so we can see a little bit better what is written in the table. The two first columns in the table are irrelevant for us, at least today. The third column contains the reference number of the standard. Let me just switch on the laser marker like this. The third column contains the reference number of the standard. So for the first one here, EN 381-11. Fourth column contains the title of the standard. And then we have sets of two columns. The first one describes which date this standard was harmonized. And then there is a second row, a second column that refers to the legal text where it was harmonized. It's not that important for us. But the first date is the date when this standard was harmonized. Then you have sometimes you have standards that comes with restrictions. They are harmonized and will give presumption of conformity except for this or that requirement. In such cases, this exception is written under this in this column of restriction. And the next column you will find is the date of start, the date when this standard was harmonized with the restriction. And then finally, we have a column that shows when the standard was taken out again from the official journal and did no longer provide presumption of conformity. This happens, and often it's because there are new versions of the standard coming up. Have a look at this one, for instance, EN 388 from 2016 has been in place, harmonized since 21 April 2018. And then it was withdrawn 19 November 2021. But that was because you can follow the next line where you have 388, EN 388 plus Amendment A1 that was harmonized as from the 19th of May 2020. So it means that the first version, 388, was replaced by the second version that is the same standard, just adding the Amendment A1. And again, what you have to do is to go all the way through the document to find all the standards that could be useful for your case. And I have to warn you, this is a pretty cumbersome task because this list is probably 100 pages long. What you can do instead is that you can look into this SPEAC Finder, the tool that we've prepared with fact sheets, because we have prepared a number of fact sheets on PPE, and we are actually even expanding this section for the time being. So you will find fact sheets of a number of common PPE like shoes, protective shoes, safety vest, and that sort of thing. And that fact sheet will also list some examples of standard that you will commonly find for these products. So now we have the standards, then we need to identify the test requirements. The purpose to do this, we will do what is called a pre-market risk assessment, which is a method for assessing the risk to verify that the product is safe. The purpose of this exercise is to check that all reasonably relevant hazards have been adequately mitigated. But of course, that would immediately prompt some questions, because how do you measure what is meant by adequately mitigated? And what is the threshold? When is it adequate enough? And I've taken this example of the reflectory tab here just to illustrate what this is all about. When is the product safe enough? If you look at this reflectory tab, you can imagine that it could have different sizes, 3 square centimeters, 30 square centimeters, 300 square centimeters. What is the correct size to have? Because I mean, if this tag is only 3 square centimeters, it's not very big. On the other hand, you can see that cars have got very strong headlights, so it might be sufficient still. There's no doubt that a 30 square centimeter tab is safer, and there's absolutely no doubt that this 300 square centimeter tab is even safer, because then you have an area like this that will reflect the light. The point is that the harmonized standards set the benchmark. So if your product complies with the harmonized standard, you are allowed to presume that the product is safe and that it fulfills the legislation. And in this exact example, we have the standard EN 17353 that describes protective clothing and reflective tabs. Clause 4.2, Table 2, simply says that the minimum surface area must be 30 square centimeters. And then we don't have to discuss if it's 3 or 30 or 300 square centimeters. That is correct figure. The method in the pre-market risk assessment is that we go through all the essential health and safety requirements that are listed in the PPE regulation in Annex 2. We try to identify all these safety requirements that are relevant for the product. And then finally, we identify test methods and evaluation criteria that will show that the product is safe if we complied. And the last one is solved by making a reference to a harmonized standard, to a clause in a harmonized standard. We recommend that you build a table with 4 columns. The first column will include the reference number that links to the reference number in Annex 2 in the regulation. The next column will describe the essential health and safety requirement. What you do here is simply that you copy-paste the text from the annex into this table so that you have the exact wording here. Third column is a yes or no. Is this requirement relevant for your product or is it not relevant? And finally, a discussion of the test method and evaluation criteria, the clause in the harmonized standard that we can refer to here. And let me just give you an example of how this is filled in. And I'm again taking this, I'm just starting from the PPE regulation, Annex 2. I'm taking the very first requirement called 111 and putting in here. 111 deals with ergonomics. It says that the PPE must enable the user to perform the risk-related activity normally whilst enjoying appropriate protection of the highest level possible. So this is what you should do in the first step. Just copy the references and copy the text under the health and safety requirements into this document so you have it here. Let me just take an example more. What you can see is that you will end up here. What I've done here is I've taken the first 4 reference numbers and inserted in the table. So you have 111 ergonomics, 1121 optimum level of protection, 1122 classes of protection, and 1211 absence of inherent risk and other nuisance factors. So you can see you will develop a table like this. It will be long, but it's a way to show that you are checking all the safety requirements in the that are relevant for the product. We need to work with an example that's easier. So what I've done is I've looked at Safety Gate and there I found this safety vest. It was notified by a member state in the EU because it did not comply, probably because the areas of the reflectory tapes were too small. In any case, the product is governed by this standard 17353 that we just touched upon before. And the notification, in case you want to know more about the product, then you can just scan the QR code and it'll take you directly into the safety gate where you can find the notification. Okay, let's see how we will do this. I'm trying here to take reference number 1.1.2.2, classes of protection appropriate to different levels of risk. So what you do is that you ask yourself, is this a relevant requirement for my PPE? Yes, it is relevant. Because if you look into the standard, you will see that there is a difference between reflectory tabs, or you will know that there's a difference between reflectory tabs that users are wearing under, let's say, reasonable light conditions, probably in dark streets or other places. And then you have perhaps safety vests that are being worn by labor or by workmen where it is absolutely essential that they can be seen immediately because otherwise they risk running into very serious accidents. So I would say it's important that you can distinguish so you can offer higher protection in case of more risky situations. So this is relevant. And if I look into standard 17353, I find clause 4.1. What you do to find this clause is that you have to take the standard and then you have to read through it all the way from the beginning. or you should at least try to go through the table of contents, and that could probably guide you into where this is interesting. And again, this is a very big job, but only the first time. The learning curve is steep, and it's possible for you. I know from my own experience, it's possible to develop to build these lists and to identify these safety requirements in the standards. It takes time the first time, but already second and third time you have gained a lot, and it's possible for you to go very, very much faster through this work. Let me take another example. 121. No inherent risks or nuisance factors should remain. Is that relevant? Yes, indeed. We don't want the safety vest to be risky to wear, and we don't want it to be annoying to wear so that people will say, we don't want it, we'll throw it away. So it's relevant, yes. And if you try to look into the standard, you will find that there are several clauses that apply to this case. I've listed them here. So this is just to highlight that you may find out that some of these essential health and safety requirements are actually covered by a number of different clauses in the standard. Oh, and then I can hear people saying, gosh, that's a lot. I have a trick. Because many of the newer standards would have an Annex ZA at the very end of the document that would contain this comparison between the essential requirements in the regulation and the clauses or subclauses of the European standard. So what you can see here is the first one, safety requirement 1.1.2.2 from the first column, links to the to the subclause 4.1. And likewise, 1.2.1 links to these clauses that we just found ourselves. So this is obviously a shortcut that you can use if you are working with some of the newer standards. They would normally include such an annex and then use it by all means. What do we then do if requirements are not included in table ZA? Well, we could just take this 111 ergonomics as one example. Is it relevant? Yes, I would say it's definitely relevant, because the safety vest must be so that you can move around and still wear it without feeling that you are prevented from doing what you're supposed to do. If you look into the standard 17353, you actually find that clause 5.1 mentions ergonomics. It refers to EN 13688 that describes sizes and that sort of thing for clothing. So in fact, it is covered. The point is just that you're referred to another standard, and that's probably why it's not listed in the Annex ZA of this one. What to do if a requirement is irrelevant? If you look into the list of safety requirements, you find a lot of requirements that are completely irrelevant for safety vests. Protection against mechanical injuries, protection in liquids, protection against harmful effects of noise. Completely irrelevant. So you just write no, 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 no in the middle column here. And then a little tip from my side. I think it's a good idea to add a short explanation in the fourth column why you have said no. And this is because you may risk someday somebody comes back to you and say, hey, why did you say that this did not provide protection against? And then it's good to, if you have included a brief explanation in the fourth column, to say, but this is why I thought in those days. If you just have a blank table, a blank cell in the table, chances are pretty good that you don't remember what you did 1, 2, 3 years in advance. So a recommendation to add this explanation. Then we need to pick out the the test requirements. Where do we find them? Well, that's actually easy, because you find them in this column. These are all the test requirements that you need to test to verify that your product is safe and that it complies with all the essential health and safety requirements from the PPE. So you copy this long list of clauses into a nice white piece of paper, and then you can take that, go to your laboratory, say, look, I'm manufacturing safety vest, and I would like to have it tested according to these clauses in EN 17353. And then they may have comments to that, but then we'll fix it. We'll just handle that in a moment. So we identified test requirements, and we're going to test. The test requirements depends upon the category of the PPE. So we just have to make a small deviation to discuss that. PPE comes in three categories. They're categorized according to risk. Category 1 covers the minimal risks, only very specific types of risks. Category 3 includes risk that may cause death or irreversible damage to health if people are exposed to them. And then category 2 contains everything in between. And if you look at the test scheme, then it depends upon the category of the PPE. If we are in category 1, the lowest risk, then it's possible for the manufacturer to self-declare the product. If we're moving into category 2 and medium risk, there's a type approval and there is a production control that must be undertaken. And finally, if you move into category 3 and the high-risk products, then again, type approval plus production control plus witnessed product testing, or type approval plus full quality assurance. The manufacturer has a choice between these two methods here. As I said, when you're talking about self-declaration, the manufacturer himself can do it. When you're talking about medium risk, type approval is something that you must involve a notified body to do. Notified bodies are test laboratories or test organizations that have been designated by EU member states. From what I remember, most of them have offices in Europe, but they also have affiliates in China that can help you with these tests. And if we're talking about class 3, high risk, the type approval must be supported by a notified body. The witnessed product testing must also be checked by a notified body. And if the manufacturer is going for the full quality assurance, the notified body must assess the quality assurance system, or must audit it. I said that it might be that the laboratory has comments to your list if you come back with a long list of test requirements that says this is what we want to have tested. That's actually good because, I mean, once you have engaged with a test laboratory, then they bring about a lot of other advantages. They're an extra pair of eyes that you can use to have a critical view upon your design. Remember, they are specialists in product safety, so they may have some observations that could be very, very useful for you to integrate in your product before you test it and it fails, so you have to go back to redo the whole design. Okay, so we've tested. So now we have all the different elements that we need to compile the technical documentation. If we look at the PPE regulation Annex 3, we can see a long list that explains exactly what must be inside. It must be in the technical documentation for PPE. I'm not going to go through all the elements in detail, but let me just dwell a little bit upon some of them. Number 1 is a complete description of the PPE, of the risk category and the intended use. And I would add any variants you should include that as well. Imagine that you are producing protective footwear. Then the idea is that for the footwear will most likely come in different sizes between perhaps 35 and 45. And then you should just mention that in the top of the description, in the description of the PPE, that this covers footwear in sizes between 35 and 46. The risk assessment in number B, that's the list we just generated from in the previous agenda item. And the list of applicable essential health and safety requirements is basically the list that you take from the risk assessment to bring on. D is a little bit scary for many manufacturers because it's actually required that the technical documentation contains very detailed design, manufacturing drawings, components, sub-assemblies, circuits. If people get hold of this one, they should be able to construct a piece of equipment that is similar to the one you've made. So this is something that manufacturers obviously want to be very, very cautious not to hand out to others. I should also say we have this link to a SPEAC fact sheet on technical documentation here behind the QR code. We have more requirements here. Nothing much to say about this, except that you need to, of course, to include the test reports and the certificates for the PV, all the documents you've got from the test laboratory. And then finally, there's this list or these items, a description of the production control scheme, a copy of the user instructions, and then there are two more items that deal with PPE that are fitted to an individual user and manufactured one by one or manufactured in small series. Some tips and tricks from my side. I very strongly recommend you always to include a very clear and well-structured table of contents because it will immediately show you or show everybody around you that you have prepared the full technical documentation and everything is there, it's complete. And very interesting enough, it will also show yourself if anything is missing in the technical documentation, because then you suddenly have holes in the table of contents. One very, very big remark here about traceability. It's one of the very, very common errors that the market surveillance authorities find in Europe. The product must feature in all documents under the same type name and under the same model name. So please ensure that the product, if it comes in different names, ensure that the same name cuts across all the documents. It's sometimes easiest to have a separate list where you simply list all the different product names that this product is sold under, and then use one name for all the testing that you have done and all the documentation that you're doing. Then there was this about confidentiality. The technical documentation do contain commercially sensitive information, as we just said. On the other hand, legislation says that the EU importer must verify the documentation exists. And thirdly, only EU market surveillance authorities have the right to see the documentation. They can actually demand to see the documentation, or otherwise they will stop the sales of the product. This is not, it's not a problem that the market surveillance authorities can see, have the right to see the documentation, because they are obliged to observe strict professional confidentiality. They are not allowed to share anything with anybody. So you shouldn't worry about that. And then again, they will only ask for the documentation that they need to verify that the product is safe. Two ways to circumvent this. One could be that you could send the importer the table of contents that I recommended you build, because it could show the importer that the documentation is there, it's complete, and it has been drawn up. You can also suggest to the importer that you can communicate directly with EU market surveillance authorities if they come and ask questions. Then you don't have to send your confidential information to the importer, who will then forward it, perhaps after having read it. But you can communicate directly to the EU market surveillance authority. One thing to note here is that you must take care of the deadlines. Normally, market surveillance authorities will give people like 2 weeks to reply. You must be able to fulfill their requirements within that narrow time frame. Right. Then we come to the last point, CE marking and preparing the Declaration of Conformity. The Declaration of Conformity is compulsory for PPE that is sold on the EU market, and it must be signed by the manufacturer. And I'm going to say this a couple of times because it's one of the very common errors with Declaration of Conformity. They are not signed. And that is such a very simple requirement, so it should really be done. The contents is described in the regulation, in the PPE regulation in Annex 9. I'm not going into detail with this, but just mentioning that you can see this, you have number 3, for instance, here, saying the sentence, this declaration of conformity is issued under the sole responsibility of the manufacturer. There are a couple of such sentences in the template here. Please ensure that this text is copied exactly the way it's written here into the Declaration of Conformity. Don't change the wording. Use exactly this wording when you fill in the when you create your own Declaration of Conformity. Then, when we're dealing with if you are producing category 2 or category 3 PPE, then clause 7 and clause 8, or point 7 and point 8 comes into force. Point 7 is the sentence that describes that you have been qualified body to do the type testing. And if you're manufacturing category 3 equipment, then the sentence must mention that you have engaged with a notified body to undertake this conformity assessment procedure according to module C, 2, or D. But these are only relevant if you're manufacturing category 2 or category 3 PPE. And then again, in item 9, the sentence signed for and on behalf of, and please remember to sign this declaration. It's a very easy way of avoiding trouble. One final thing I would say, oh, it's just a bit too quick. Oh, oops. It was just a bit too quick. When you have all this in place, it's possible for you to print the CE marking, and then you can affix that to the product with all the obligatory information. And again, I will say you will find more information in the SPEAC Finder fact sheets about exactly what information should be marked on the product and what should go onto your CE marking. That was what I wanted to say. And then we've come to the, I just want to give you a few links. I've mentioned SPEAC Finder several times, so the top link will take you there. It's a comprehensive library of fact sheets that will learn you everything about how to make safe products, or how to deal with different horizontal issues in product safety. We also have an e-learning tool called the SPEAC Academy, which you'll find behind the lower QR code on this slide. And finally, we encourage you to get in contact if there is anything. You can see a lot of contact details here, like email addresses. The blue square contains the SPEAC website link, and the red one contains a link to the WeChat account. That was what I wanted to say. Thank you very much indeed. Let me now hand you back to Anthony. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Torben. That was really, really informative as always. Really, really thank you so much for all that information. To show you guys in practice what that might look like and maybe a perspective from a third party testing, inspection, and certification company, a TIC company like HQTS. We've got Lee Min Duk to show you what in real life some case studies might look like. Thank you, Duk.
Okay, so okay. Thank you so much for Anthony and also Torben have shared. That's a very informative that we can hear today. And then now I would like to share you some case study that how we have support our European client from when they are buying the product from Vietnam or from Asia. Okay, so this is one of our clients. They are a Czech company that have around more than 30 years, have been leading in manufacturing, wholesaler and distributor for the pet care and breeding supplies. They are carrying wide catalog of pet care and also breeding product reportedly from the pet food, bedding, and also cat and small animal, and also accessory. On your right hand side is the product line of them. You can see that they have a lot of products, and also they yeah, So when they come to HQTS, they have an inquiry for the product testing and also product inspection before the shipment. So when they reach it to us, so we will have the process that we will support them. Firstly, that for the inspection, it could be so I will say the inspection first, and then I will say the testing later. For the inspection, since they want to inspect before the shipment, so they require us in a short time in notice. Then we HQTS need to be flexible to fit in their schedule. Uh, we require them to send the information about their order, and then when we receive the information, we will give them the quotation, and then when the client can confirm immediately, we will check with the supplier and run the inspection on the agreed date. Okay. After the inspection have been performed, we will issue the final report on the next working day. So for this process can take around 3 days or less than that. However, we always encourage our client to inform us in 3 days in advance uh, to have a smooth advancement. Next one. So we will ask that what the requirement that the client needs to send to us. So there's some basic information about the order we need to collect. First is the total quantity including the breakdown of each design item. Secondly is the product picture and also the technical specification. Or you can send us the checklist of the products. That's how you want us to perform the inspections. The third one, of course, we need to know the factory location and also the contact information. So our team in local, in Asia, in Vietnam, so we can contact to the factory. And lastly, that any specific requirement that you want us to do. Okay. Um, um, However, during the first inspection that we do the random inspection, some client they see the pet is not really meet their standard. They may ask us for the re-inspection. Uh, Re-inspection. This can be 100% or the random depend on the client. On the right hand side that you will see is how the result summary will be look like. There's some part that you can see the confirm, and some part it will be the pending or non-confirm. And for that point, the client can go in deep in the detail to see why it's pending, why it's non-confirm. Okay? And then we will go to the product testing. Product testing is a bit different. Since we will need to have the product shipped to our laboratory, and the issue is the client they didn't know that they don't know that if the product is aligned with the Europe safety regulation or not. So we as a lab, we as the expert, we will suggest all the necessary testing item according to Europe standard to the client. And on your right hand side is the checklist or the list test of for the pet product. Yeah, you can see even for the pet product, they also need to test a lot of items like this. And furthermore, we doesn't have only one client. We have not only for the pet product. We also have another client for another industry like apparel and also for the furniture. For the apparel, we have the Labrador. This is the uh, Wested workwear brand, and also for the furniture, we have the Dumont. This is the online furniture retailer in Romania. Yeah. And for our service, I will talk a bit more about our service. HQTS will have a wide range of the service, including for the audit inspection, for the testing, for the supplier management, for the product compliance, government certification, and also sustainable solution. Yeah, yeah, that's it all that I want to share to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Duke, for the very real case studies. I think from Duke's presentation, it's clear to see that no matter the industries you're in, there are relevant ways that people like us, HQTS and Duke and Torben, the information and our service can help you. Okay. Now, moving on to the Q&A section. First of all, I know some of you might have some questions that you might want to ask Duke or Torben. Very quickly, I'm just going to open up our chat box and give access for everyone to talk to the host and panelists. So, hello. You can ask your questions in the chat. Just make sure that your to is to everyone. Okay. Hello. Now, to kick off the Q&A, we have a few questions already submitted prior from some of the registrants online. First question, I think this goes out to Torben. Which standards apply to gloves and integrated electric heating, battery driven?
Oh, very good question. I don't know from the top of my heart, but what you have to do here is that you have to open the document with the different PPE standards and then trawl through to find which ones apply. Or you have to cheat and go into the SpeakFinder fact sheets to see which standards they will apply. The problem is they only cover the non-electrical risks, everything that has to do with the product working as a glove. The electrical risks, you need to look at the LVD, I would say, to find appropriate standards there that you can look up. And you also have to look at EMC and you have to look at RoHS, the RoHS directive. So it's if the products become complicated, then the risk assessment will also grow and become fairly complicated. But again, it's once and for all you have to do this, and then you can presumably copy paste for the next PPE you're preparing.
Great. The next question we have here is, who will issue the approval of the product? Can I buy the CE mark there?
Yeah, you want me to answer that as well, or?
Yep,
Uh,
Torben, you can go ahead. I
yep,
think you
thanks.
already feel that one.
It's a question where you often see people uh, feel a little bit uncomfortable that they have to take the responsibility for the product themselves. But if you sell products to the European Union, there is no common EU body that will approve all your products for you, or you don't have to apply to a certain body to get the approval. Once you have prepared a product and you have proven that it's safe and compliant, then it's basically a question of filling in the Declaration of Conformity, where you take the responsibility for the product and then can start selling it. So there is no EU body, and you don't have to buy the CE marks from a pan-European body.
Fantastic, that makes sense. And another question here, Torben, you're already unmuted, so it might as well be you. Uh,
Okay, okay.
do I need to prepare a DOC? My products don't contain any electric functions.
Yeah, the DOC goes for all products that are CE marked. It has to be used for all products that are CE marked. And it goes for electrical product, but it also goes for PPE. So yes, you have to prepare it even if the product does not contain electric features.
Understood. Um, Theodore has a question in the live chat. So maybe let's get Theodore involved. He asks, for a stabilizing jack with just shifting mechanisms intended for moving, positioning the stabilizer, not providing vertical lifting, is the machinery directive applicable? For me, not, but our supplier confirmed they applied CE mark on this product and is selling to Europe.
I would say yes, the machinery directive would apply. Um, I'm not fully familiar with this kind of equipment, but the definition of a machine says that it's a compilation of parts and one of them has to be movable. And I suppose it goes for this one. There's a risk you're moving something around, so there is a risk, and this means it must fall under the machinery directive.
Fantastic. Thank you, Torben, and thank you, Theodore, for the live question. If anyone else has any live questions like Theodore, you can send it in the group chat, sorry, in the webinar chat on Zoom. And make sure the two is to everyone or to hosts and panelists, just so we can see the question in the chat. Now we'll move on to some of the pre-sent questions by registrants online. The next one goes, we sell the same product with small trim or attachment variants. Should we treat them as one item in the risk assessment?
I would say yes. Provided that that the products are that they behave alike in the risk assessment sense, then you should treat them as one. And then I guess this could be one of the variants that you could mention in the description of the product, that you're selling this product with variants, features, or attachments on it. But I think it's possible to treat them as one product if there are no differences in the safety performance caused by these attachments.
The next question here is, we do testing in a non-European lab. Will we be forced to retest in Europe?
Oh, good question. The tricky thing is that if you are moving around in category 2 or category 3, you need to involve a notified body, and they have European headquarters. But if you're lucky, they may have Chinese affiliates, or they may have cooperation agreements in China that could help you, or Vietnam perhaps. Um, Yeah. Do you need to retest? It depends, because if you're lucky and you're using one of these laboratories that already has some sort of agreement with a European lab, you would probably not have to do it.
Hmm,
And then on top of that, if you're just manufacturing category 1 equipment, then you can test it anywhere, because you're not obliged to do the testing at an accredited laboratory.
makes sense. So, in short, do you think it's safe to say, even though it's a non-European lab, as long as it's accredited by Europe or European standards, it shouldn't be an issue?
Well, it's a question if someone other way has this notified body status, and notified body status does not require accreditation
Mhm.
necessarily, as I recall it. So I would look carefully, or I would discuss with the laboratory if they have this notification body status, or if they are working with European notified bodies already.
Fantastic. Thanks, Torben. The next one here, I think we had a similar question for our last episode of the webinar. It talks about confidential information. So it goes, when we show our European importer the technical files, are there any sensitive details or confidential information we should avoid giving?
That's also a very good question indeed. As we just said, there is a lot of information in the technical documentation that is confidential. It depends, I would say. If you have a very good relationship with the importer and you have a well-written NDA, it should be possible to share everything with the importer. Otherwise, I would recommend that you're doing like we discussed during the presentation. For instance, send the table of contents, or yeah, in other ways help. It could also be that you can invite a laboratory, an independent laboratory like yourself, to go through the technical documentation and say, okay, we can verify, we can guarantee everything is here and it's correct. And that then nobody needs to check you don't need to put sensitive information in the hands of people where it shouldn't be.
Makes sense. The next question here, I think you've already answered in one of your slides there with the QR codes. It goes, how often do standards change and how will we know updates?
Updates are always shown on these pages or these lists of standards. Uh, and there will normally be a transition period of 6, 12, 18 months perhaps between two versions of standard. No guarantees, but that's the common situation, that it will happen like that.
Makes sense.
How often do they change? I would say every 4, 5, 6 years,
Mhm.
more or less. So.
And there are definitely ways for a lot of the audience and viewership to stay updated. I think you can subscribe to different types of newsletters. The HQTS newsletter subscription is also always available, completely free. We give updates as they come up, and we have teams and departments dedicated to follow these updates, as well as recall updates as well. There's also a lot of information on the Speak website. So feel free to jump and Speak website. They're very up to date as well and very timely with these regulations. Okay.
Yeah.
Next question here. It's a second last question, two more to go. Do test reports need to be translated into the specific European country language, or is English broadly accepted?
Test reports can be in English. It's user instructions and that sort of thing. It must go into the national language, but test reports, English is fine.
Mhm. And the last question here is, where can we find a short checklist we can use right away before shipping to Europe to avoid common mistakes?
Yeah, well, the easy answer is I don't know. Um, I think this is actually a very, very good idea. So I will bring it back to the Speak project and see if we can do something to develop it, such a checklist, because I think there's something there that could be interesting to explore and give some guidance to manufacturers and exporters so they know how to send reasonably good products to Europe. So that's a very good idea. Thank you very much, whoever who asked raised it.
Maybe we can help you with that, Torben. HQTS
Great,
and Speak can
cool.
work on something together, I think,
Yeah, yeah,
because quite frequently, depending, I think it depends on the product, category and whatnot. The checklist might look slightly different. And
mhm,
as Duke has shown in some of his case studies, these type of issues we face all the time. So there are
yeah,
some common mistakes with manufacturers, importers, exporters that we might be able to cover.
yeah.
And with the expertise of Speak, we might come up with a very good and comprehensive checklist, even
Great.
though short.
Okay. Even if short. Yeah, yeah. Cool. Yeah, but that's
That'd be
good.
good.
If you have such material already available, then I mean, by all means, let us use and see what we can do. So
Yeah, definitely. It
that
might
is
be a
very good.
conversation we'll have after this webinar.
Yeah, yeah.
And for those that are interested, feel free to just drop us an email and maybe we can keep you on a list for that checklist.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any more questions in the live Q&A while we still got Torben and Duke online? Okay, it looks like everyone seems completely fine with the presentation. I think that was very informative, Torben and Duke. Thank you everyone for joining us, and again, thank you for the panelists and the experts for the very, very relevant information at the end of the year, 2025. So who knows what next year, 2026 might bring, you know?
Hopefully better things. So yeah.
Hopefully better things. Okay, thank you everyone. We'll end the webinar and conclude it here. I will also be sending the recording out to all the registrants as well. Okay, thanks everyone. Goodbye now.
Thank you very much indeed. Take care,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.